take 10 that I have tried to start this video and just like within the first 30 to 50 seconds completely devolved into incoherent nonsense. So I'm gonna try and do a bit better this time. Hi everyone, Rosie here. Welcome back to my channel. It's, not even time to do my November wrap-up. It is very overdue to do my November wrap-up. It is mid-December. The Christmas tree is up. The sweaters are on. But I did read some really fantastic books in November, and I do want to share them with you. But before we do that, I need to start with one book that I forgot to talk about in my massive August through October wrap-up that went up about 2 weeks ago now. It's up here if you would like to see that. And that is The Diary of a Bookseller by Shaun Bythell. This is a memoir about the author's experience running the largest secondhand bookstore in Scotland. That sounded super fun. I remember reading Jen Campbell's Weird Things People Say in Bookstores like many years ago and absolutely loving that. So when I saw this on Scribd, I was like, that sounds like the perfect fun audiobook to listen to. And unfortunately, I ended up DNFing this. I think about 50% of the way through. It was one of those books where like there were little elements that I was like, really? I don't know. And then it just got more and more until I decided I didn't want to keep reading. Essentially, it is what the title says. It is a diary. It goes day by day, includes a bunch of information that frankly, especially in audio, wasn't very interesting, but like how many orders they got and how much they sold that day. In theory, that would be cool, but it just ended up feeling really repetitive. The way the author talked about everyone in this book just felt really mean, honestly. And I think that's partly because I don't know this person. I don't know any of the people involved with this. And this is a book that has been published for many people to read. There were a lot of little anecdotes in this that I could totally see that if a friend or like a family member told me in the, private sphere of our own home or something would be kind of funny, but coming from a stranger about strangers, it just felt mean. Does that make me sound like a mean person? Finally, I got pushed over the edge, not by the Death of a Thousand Cuts of mean cattiness, but there was this one entry about how the author needed to talk about how much they opposed windmill development in their area because of the visual obstruction. Not any sorts of concerns about like, is this the best way to invest in renewable energy for this area? Is this going to be good for wildlife? Like, not reasonable concerns in my view, but like, I think the windmills are ugly, so I'm going to object to this, and felt the need to share that in his book about being a bookseller, and I just went, why am I reading this? So I stopped. And that is that. Now, let us move on to the books I actually did finish in November. The first of those is Butts by Heather Radke. I actually wrote a review of this because it was an e-arc from NetGalley, so thank you to NetGalley and whoever the publisher was. I didn't take notes, I'm sorry. Butts perfectly threads the needle of tone and style that all too often betrays fantastic concepts with poor execution. This is, of course, a very subjective opinion. If you love well-researched, thoughtful nonfiction that effortlessly blends history, pop culture, and intersectional feminism with personal memoir, I think you're gonna love this. I certainly did. Overall, I found this to be a much more cohesive and well-written book than many others that I would categorize in this similar grouping. Radke offered a depth of research and reflection that I often find lacking in this type of book, but her writing remained enjoyable and approachable. I don't know what else to say. It is a history of butts in their societal context. I don't know what other word to use for that. It was really cool. I highly recommend checking this out. I then read The Domestic Revolution by Ruth Goodman. This is about the shift in the UK from cooking with wood to cooking with coal, which at first sounds like that's not going to be very interesting, or how could you possibly write like I don't know how long the page count was, but like 11-hour audiobook about just that. But what Goodman explores is how the shift from wood to coal changed so much about everything. How we cook, what we cook, how we clean our homes. It had huge ripple-on effects in terms of other like outside of the home spheres as too, because of course that now we need to supply coal. This changes like where people are working, how we're managing the land. If you like domestic history and the history of everyday stuff, then I loved this. 10 out of 10, would recommend. Super, super informative. And Goodman is also like a practical archaeologist. Like, and she's a historian, but she does a lot of like recreating and doing things in the way it was done in the past in order to learn more about it type stuff. I know there's a word for this, but I don't know what it is. That was so cool because throughout this book, she's not just writing about what other people are saying. She can also call into reference, I have experience doing both of these things. Here are ways that it is different that you might not know, which is invaluable in this sort of topic, because when the shift from wood to coal was happening, the people who were most knowledgeable about the day-to-day impact that it had were largely voiceless. Women, especially the sorts of women who were doing the actual labor of heating and cooking and cleaning, usually did not have the, I guess, platform to write about their experiences or to record that. And I love that because of her experience actually doing some of this stuff, Goodman can provide much more of a perspective than necessarily, or an additional perspective at least, that contemporary accounts often leave out. I then read Sybil and Cyril, Cyril Power and Sybil Andrews, Artists Together by Jenny Uglow. This was another arc from NetGalley, so thank you to the publisher and NetGalley for that. And that also means I have a review to read for you. This is about a pair of artists, Sybil and Cyril from the title, who worked in the 1920s through early 40s in the UK and were part of... I couldn't remember why I was initially interested in this book, and I still can't figure that out after reading it. This is sort of an unfortunate case of a topic that could either be a really fascinating deep dive that I didn't know I needed to read and that I'm now so glad that I did, or just kind of flat. And unfortunately for me, it was kind of flat. I'm not super interested in art, or especially British art, the period between the two wars. I don't know, biographies of artists. For me, those sorts of topics need to be really interestingly written or well written or offer some perspective that I just felt this one didn't have. I didn't enjoy the writing that much. Like, I didn't hate it, obviously. I didn't DNF it. I finished it. I just didn't love it. It felt very odd in terms of pacing. Like, there's a lot of like jumping back and forth, I felt, in time. I was never really clear what was going on. I don't know. I didn't love this, but maybe that just means it wasn't for me. Then another E-arc, In Search of Beira's Hammer by Kristina Young. This is a little fantasy novella about a woman on a walk in Scotland looking for a mythical hammer so that she can make mountains around Berlin. Let's read my review. This was another 3.5 stars, but for a very different reason. A delightful introduction to Young's writing. In Search of Beira's Hammer is also a series of introductions to a host of exciting characters. Unfortunately, the one character I felt wasn't properly fleshed out was the first-person narrator, which did leave me feeling really detached from the story. If it wasn't quite a 4-star book, it's largely because it wasn't long enough to be. I didn't feel that the novella was long enough to give all of the characters and the plot the space they needed to properly develop, and the plot especially just felt rushed and also like just an excuse to meet the characters, which is fine, but then why have a plot as well? Despite all of that, I will probably try another one of Young's books or something in the future, some more of her writing. I don't know. This didn't quite work, which is unfortunate because I feel like it could have been really cool. It just wasn't quite there yet. I then listened to The Witches of Moonshyne Manor by Bianca Marais on audio. This is a novel about a coven of elderly witches who are facing a crisis and have to confront with some dark events in their past. I heard Milena of Milena Reads review this in her October wrap-up, I think, and it just sounded so fun and so like a book that I would enjoy, so I immediately started listening to it, and I was not wrong. It was really fun. It was really lovely. I thought the characters in this were so good. I loved how they interacted with each other. I loved that we had such a great cast of elderly women as our protagonists. everything about it was great. It was really, really cool. The plot was fun, stressful at times, but not so stressful that I didn't want to keep reading it. And all in all, a really, really great book. Then another nonfiction, The Address Book, What Street Addresses Reveal About Identity, Race, Wealth, and Power by Deirdre Mask. This is a nonfiction book, which is apparently history. Yeah, I guess I could say it's a history book. That's exactly about what it says. It's about street addresses. This was really enjoyable, but honestly, I don't have much of a review for it because I wasn't thinking or writing reviewy things when I read it. It was interesting, it was informative. If that sounds like a topic that you would enjoy, then you should check this out. It was really cool. I then finally finished Le Comte de Monte-Cristo by Alexandre Dumas. This was a buddy read with Camilla of Hasty Ye Books. I think we started in July or August, I can't remember. It's a long book, and I think it's a book that it makes sense to take slowly. If you're not familiar, it is the story of Edmond Dante, a young man who is horrifically wronged and then sets out to get revenge on absolutely everyone who ever hurt him. It is a wild ride. It felt like reading a soap opera, and that is the highest compliment I can give it. It was high drama, high stakes. There are chapters where I'm just like, this is a training montage, and it's so well done. And there were other chapters that had profound perspectives on religion that I was like, wow, I've never connected with a description of religion in a book like I have with this. And then there's scenes where it's just like, I love how messy everyone is being. This is amazing. There are so many characters, there are so many plot lines. It is a book that I think is best savored. I wouldn't have wanted to try and read this in the span of a month. I think it was better to spread it out, take my time, because that is how Dumas wrote it. It was, as far as I understand at least, written in like installments that were published monthly in magazines sort of things. I think taking a bit of time with it and reading it that way really works. I expected to like it. I wouldn't have set out to read like a 1,000+ page book if I didn't think I was going to like it. But at the same time, I don't think I thought I would like it as much as I did or find it as fun. It's a very different style of reading to what I'm used to, but I loved it. I then read Sea People, The Puzzle of Polynesia by Kristina Thompson. This is a nonfiction history about the people of Polynesia. It follows the history from contact with Europeans and sort of focuses it from the lens of Western history and science's understanding of these people, which is the only reason I knocked a star off. The content, the theme was so cool. I enjoyed Kristina Thompson's writing, but the entire book just felt so Western view centric as opposed to at all from the perspective of Polynesian people. And that just kept having a bit of like a, is this the best way to format this book feeling for me? Really fascinating information. I learned a lot. It was super cool. It just wasn't. I then read Love Lives Here, A Story of Thriving in a Transgender Family by Jette Knox. This is about the author and their family's experience when first their daughter, who was, I think, in middle school, and then their wife came out as trans and began living openly as women, and the effect that that had on their family, and talking about both the struggles that they faced as a family, but then also, as the title says, how wonderfully positive the transformation was on their family and how everyone in the family was so much happier and like, just, yeah, it was really wonderful. It's a memoir. How do you review memoirs like this? I don't know. I'm really glad I read it. It was really interesting. I really enjoyed it. Is that kind of repetitive from everything I've said in this video? Yes, but if I've said it for everything in this video, it's because it's been true, and I also didn't take good notes. I promise in December I am writing little reviews as I finish books, so hopefully I will have some more coherent and like useful things for you in future videos. I have a couple more books to talk about from November though. The next one is Orchard, A Year in England's Eden by Benedict MacDonald. And I think someone else, I can't remember who the other author is and it's not listed here, so I don't know. It'll be on the screen and in the description and stuff. This is a nonfiction book about a year in a sort of wild orchard, not wild, that's the wrong word. Not monocultured orchard in England, and observing the animals and the plants and all the interconnected systems, and using that as sort of a springing off point to talk about a lot of topics in like nature and climate crisis and all sorts of stuff like that. It was really cool. It was really enjoyable. Great book. Again, just a random audiobook that I saw on Scribd and thought that sounds cool. And it was very, very cool. Next up, I have a book that has been on my TBR since like I started this channel practically, and that is Betraying Big Brother: The Feminist Awakening in China by Letta Hong Fincher. This focuses in on 5 activists who were arrested and detained for over a month, I think, for their feminist activities in China. I can't remember when they were arrested, before 2018, because that's when this book was published. But it uses them to sort of explore the theme of what is going on with feminism in China and how that is quite different from the feminist movement in other parts of the world because of Chinese society, and what different things have different meanings and stuff in that context. I'm not explaining this well. It was a really, really fascinating book. I really enjoyed reading it. And if you're interested in feminism at all, I definitely recommend checking it out. And my final book that I finished in November was Monstrous Regiment. This is the 31st Discworld novel. It's one of the standalone novels. It's an excellent introductory point if you haven't read any Discworld, because you don't really need to know too much. It follows a young woman who disguises herself as a boy and signs up in the army to try and find her brother who has gone missing, and then she has sort of a whole adventure along the way, and a lot of things happen, of course. It is really fun. It has a lot to say about all sorts of topics, because this is a Tara Pratchett book, and it is incredibly hilarious too. So that was very, very enjoyable. And I have just one last book to mention. This is a DNF from November, and it is Your Table is Ready: Tales of a New York City Maitre d' by Michael Secchi Azzolina. So I only read the introduction to this, I'll be perfectly honest, and then I said, no, it's not for me. The tone felt like it was trying to be Anthony Bourdain. And I love Anthony Bourdain. He is a great author. His books are really good. That's because he's him. And I feel kind of bad. Maybe this is just this author's voice, and now, because of that presence in this field, they're always going to be compared to that. Maybe I'm the only one who sees it too. I don't know. This just, to me, the introduction, the tone, it read like someone trying to be Anthony Bourdain, and I'm not interested in that. I want to read stuff that feels like people's own voice, so I didn't keep reading it because I wasn't vibing. And I can't really say anything else about it. Those are all of the books I read in November. Lots and lots of nonfiction for Nonfiction November. I think I was something like 2/3 of my books nonfiction, which was fantastic. And I, enjoyed a lot of them a lot. So that was really, really good. Let me know down below in the comments, what did you read in November? What were your favorites? What was an unexpected surprise? I want to hear all about it. And if you like this video, make sure to give it a like down below. If you would like to see more of my videos, make sure you hit subscribe, and thank you for watching.